Faith, the third principle of recovery. You may ask, isn't it enough to just believe in God? Where does faith come in? How do we even know we have faith? Real faith, saving faith, even healing faith? Well, this is a tricky one, but relax. There are answers. First, do you struggle with codependency, chemical addiction of any kind? You just want less drama in your life? I think this series is for you. Hello, God bless and welcome. I'm Kevin Haggerty. You're listening to the Godlogic Project. This is the third in a 12-part series on the principles of recovery. The third principle being the principle of faith. Please consider yourself or anyone you love while you're listening to this message. Please receive this and all Godlogic messages in the spirit of love and service they're offered. I know this series forces us to look into some dark places. Please understand that this is merely my opinion on the principle of faith and not, by any means, a definitive expose on the principles or faith for that matter. I'm just a messenger. Just to introduce myself to you, my name is Kevin and I'm an alcoholic. That does not mean these principles we're going to unpack in each of this 12-part series apply only to chemical addiction. In fact, in my 30 years experience in the recovery process, as well as years of sponsoring and mentoring folks through the recovery process, I've come to understand these principles can be applied to any debilitating obsession that we struggle with that leads us into repeated patterns of brokenness. So that does not mean the next drink or drug for you. It could very well mean the next dysfunctional relationship, the next bout with binge eating, even the next bout of needing the approval of others, or, in essence, being addicted to the approval of others. It seems all these amount to a kind of idolatry, putting someone or something above our relationship with our Creator, deriving our self-worth from all the wrong places. You see, I truly believe we're designed to be in relationship with God. Our Genesis 2 relationship. When we remove God from our hearts, it leaves a God-shaped hole. We try to fill that hole with alcohol, drugs, sex, status, money, food, social media, even our spouses and our children. But nothing fits. It's been my experience, nothing ever will fit. It's been God we've been lacking the whole time. Stemming from low self-esteem, these types of social addictions can be every bit as hard to stop as our chemical addictions. But now back to the question of faith. To non-believers or people new to relationship with God, it's hard to separate hope and faith. Cynics might even tell you they're the same thing, antiquated, even foolish. But are they? Well, I say not. Of course, me being a pastor, you would expect me to say that. You might feel entitled to my explanation of faith, a reasonable defense of my faith, and you would be entitled to that. The principle of faith, which is derived from the third step of the 12-step recovery process, teaches us we must make a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God. Like all 12 principles, this is critical if we're going to live a reasonably happy life. Matthew 9:27-30 reads, "And as Jesus passed on from there, 2 blind men followed him, crying aloud, 'Have mercy on us, Son of David.' When he entered the house, the blind men came in to him. And Jesus said to them, 'Do you believe that I'm able to do this?' They said to him, 'Yes, Lord.' Then he touched their eyes, saying, 'According to your faith be it done to you.' And their eyes were opened." Well, what would it take to open your eyes? When will you have this kind of faith? Well, I think you already do. I think it's just buried in fear, specifically 1,000 forms of self-centered fear. But there is a solution, and if the solution to overcoming our character defects is having faith, perhaps losing that faith somewhere along the line is the cause of those defects. It only makes sense. You see, if faith is written in our DNA, and I believe it is, then something is overcoming it, overwhelming it. Fear, lies, doubt, all come to us by the hand of the enemy, the devil. You can't believe in God without believing in the devil, by the way. The devil wants you fearful, doubting yourself, doubting God. In In fact, the serpent only needed to plant the seed of doubt in Eve's heart to introduce sin to the world. Did God really say was all it took? You see, hope and faith are similar, yet very different. There is, to me, a type of blindness in hope, even desperation. The child whistling in the dark has hope, but he doesn't have peace. He would have peace if he only had faith. So faith, on the other hand, has logic and even proof built into it. Faith, I guess you can say, is hope with a little experience mixed in. Some things are unexplainable, yet predictable and repeatable. Recovery, for instance, when these 12 principles are applied, can be predictable and repeatable. Atheists may not agree with that, but millions of folks just like you and me would certainly attest to the life-saving effectiveness of these principles. So you may say, I believe in God, and I tell you that's a start, but that's not a destination. There's a big difference between believing in God and having faith in God, if I may explain it with an analogy. If you go to the circus and you see a clown pushing a wheelbarrow across a tightrope, you may believe he's going to make it, but it takes faith to get in the wheelbarrow. Think about that. Your belief is fine until your life depends on it. Then only faith works. How about putting your kids in that wheelbarrow? What kind of faith do you think that takes? Well, I've been there. I was full of fear the first time I needed to rely on God's protection for myself and my kids. Turns out, He was holding us in the palm of His hands the whole time. That's just my testimony, but there's millions of others. You see, God can use your story for His glory. He trusts us with the footwork. We just need to trust Him with the outcome. It says so in John 15:4. It reads, Abide in me and I in you. As the branch cannot bear fruit by itself unless it abides in the vine, neither can you unless you abide in me. Unfortunately, the world teaches us to measure our success by the fruit we bear. But Jesus says otherwise. Jesus is the vine. We are the branches. The fruit isn't our focus. The vine is. Jesus is. The fruit is really none of our business. In fact, when we turn our attention to the fruit, we're really just turning our attention to ourselves. That's pride. Perhaps the deadliest of the 7 deadly sins. Well, you might be saying, that makes sense, but I'm still scared. Well, you're not alone. In some sense, you're not even unique. These principles have brought millions back from the gates of insanity and death. It's worked for them. It's working for me. It'll work for you. There are churches and support groups all over the country that are filled with people just like you and me. God works through those people. He reaches out to us through them. They're there to help, and for the most part, they have a servant's heart. He will replace your heart of stone with a heart of flesh. He did for me, and He has for millions of others. Simply, these principles work when nothing else does. Sometimes I think we hold God to a beyond a reasonable doubt standard of proof when His preponderance of evidence is all around us. I say it's more likely than not that there is a loving God. I can't go into that right now, but I promise to cover proof of God in upcoming podcasts. Believe me, there's a lot of it. For now, let's just say the pain is in the resistance. When we cease fighting everybody and everything, life gets easier, more peaceful, even fulfilling. So faith, it seems, is a quiet confidence. It is a peace that surpasses all understanding. I'll leave you with this from the book, The Good Book by Duran Spoo. Spoo writes, outside of the book of Judges, Samson is mentioned only one time in the Bible, among a list of faithful in Hebrews 11. Even though he was a deeply flawed individual, subsequent generations have remembered Samson as a faithful person, in part because he finished his life well. I want that for you. And I don't want you to miss the rest of this 12-part series. Next week's principle being the principle of courage. Please, download the Godlogic Project from SoundCloud. You'll be alerted each time a new content is uploaded. Share it with a friend. Email me with your questions or your personal testimony at godlogicproject@gmail.com. Let me know if you'd like to be a guest on the podcast. I hope you'll also subscribe to the Godlogic Project on YouTube. Ring the alert bell while you're there. Visit godlogicproject.com for links to our growing list of social media and podcast platforms that these messages are available on. And if no one's told you they love you today, well, God loves you. So do I. Receive that, be blessed, and we'll speak soon. Thank you.